Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very excited to be a part of this conference. Thank you to the organizers and the planners for putting on such a great presentation with many great speakers and topics. My name is Martha McBride. I am one of the coordinators at Children's of Alabama in Birmingham. I was asked to speak today a little bit about some of the frontline issues that we face as ECMO coordinators and leaders of our departments. So I wanted to speak with you briefly today about prioritizing ECMO staffing. I entitled this "Where Logic and Creativity Meet" because I think there is a little bit of both that goes into it. So we'll go ahead and get started. I have no disclosures for this particular presentation. Some of the objectives in the short time that we have together, I want to focus on a few of the following things. Some of the staffing challenges that we're facing in our field. I think it's something we can all relate to, something that is in our face every day. Also advocating for priority ECMO staffing, and this is at all levels, not just at the bedside or management of the department, but also as the organization. Also maybe offer you some creative solutions for some budget neutral FTEs. I'll talk a little bit about persuasive data tracking that I use. If you're not using that, maybe it'll be helpful to you. And then also adding value and role development with your staff. I'm very passionate about this one. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a few minutes. So what challenges do we face? Are there too many to count? Possibly. Where do we even start? I think we've all faced many challenges, not only with the recent pandemic, but just some workforce changes and some just different experiences that we've had. So in particular, of course, the staffing shortages is something that we all are up against. But also, I think with something like a pandemic, you get some changes to your employees' desires, to maybe their goals. They may want more of a work-life balance. Something we've dealt with in our department is absolutely some of our senior and very experienced primers and specialists approaching retirement age. That will be very impactful to our program. Also, sometimes the staff can feel under-recognized and underappreciated. We're always going to have turnover rates. I feel like it has been higher lately. And then also compensation, trying to compete with maybe different travel opportunities or the center across the street that may be offering a sign-on bonus, different units offering premium pay. All of those things play into these challenges that we're facing. And then also the job is hard. Our team, as I'm sure most of yours, work tirelessly on the sickest patients. So this requires complex training, and you really do have to find the right person for the job. So what can we do about it? These are the 4 topics that I'd like to touch on. Advocating for your program, tracking important data, utilizing creative staffing solutions, and that full role development that I spoke of earlier. The American Hospital Association always publishes this workforce scan, and really this is an excerpt from the 2023 scan, but what I want to take away from it is really it is collaboration at all levels. Like I mentioned earlier, it's not just at the departmental level, but also at the organizational level, as well as the community level. All stakeholders must be involved in decision-making and advocacy, really, to get these patients taken care of. So first of all, advocacy. Teams have got to advocate for their departments. This can be in a number of different ways, at the unit level, also at the organizational level, and then also in the ECMO community. So it's really important that the leaders of the department highlight the departmental impact that your team is having. You can do this, through participation in hospital initiatives, any way that you can take what your organization is doing and really hone into how that can affect your department and really get involved will be very impactful. Also, conference participation. Share the things that your program is doing, the impact that you're having on patient care and the industry as a whole. QI initiatives are always well favored by administration. They truly appreciate the QI that the different departments of the hospital are doing. So you must not only participate in those different projects, but also share that with the organization. And then participating just, hospital-wide, any of the hospital-wide QI projects that you can get involved in. And then also being persistent but patient is very important. You should expect equality among departments, but also be okay with no. It's okay to ask questions and wait patiently for the response that you're waiting on. Next, I'd like to mention data tracking. This is something that is very important in my world as a coordinator. Many times my leaders are asking for, different patient census tracking. They are very keyed in on diversion data, many different areas that I keep a running spreadsheet so that when asked, I can present the information. Most decisions from hospital administrative employees are going to be made based on data. So it's important that you keep that at an arm's reach to be able to present that when asked. Some of the things that I track are volume over time. So of course, pump hours and patient days and different where most of our ECMO, what units our ECMO patients are in. Any kind of fluctuations or trends that we see, we like to track that as well. Anytime we have an increased demand, for example, when our cardiac unit moved over to our children's hospital, of course, we saw an increased demand. So that was important to show the data for that. Also, missed opportunities to provide patient service. And this would be related to diversion as well. So first and foremost, I would encourage you to have a clear diversion plan. So ours is based on pump capacity. And it's very easy to say we are at capacity either based on staffing or equipment or whatever the case may be. But it is important to track any patients that are not able to be cared for and what the reasoning behind that is. We also track premium pay. So this includes overtime, this includes callback pay, any kind of tiered bonus pay, anything above and beyond what we would normally pay, because what you may find is that you're paying just as much in that premium differential as you would if you were able to add a full-time employee or even a part-time employee. And then it's important to keep a pulse on where you're headed as a department. And that includes, like I mentioned previously, the QI projects and any of the other initiatives that you have going on within your program. The next topic I'd like to touch on is creative staffing solutions. I think that, of course, we have to be logical about how to cover a pump, but I do feel like there are some creative approaches to ECMO staffing. What I will say is that I feel like the priority does have to be the ECMO patients. These are the sickest in the hospital, and so it's important to get the support from administration as well as the different ICUs. So we use both a unit-based and a core team approach. The unit-based plan is obviously financially smart for the organization, but what we found more recently with ICU staffing shortages is we didn't have as good of access to those trained specialists if their home unit needed them. And so we've worked really hard to prioritize ECMO staffing just to advocate for these patients and really move into a combined approach of unit-based and core team, but also building that core team so that we have access to staff when we need it. One idea that we discussed and we actually implemented in our program is the repurposement of unused FTEs. I thought this was a pretty creative approach for not asking to add additional FTEs, but just really repurpose those from the ICUs into the ECMO department. And this seemed to work well from an administrative position, but also from an ICU standpoint. Because what happens in our program when any of our core team members, if we have a low pump census or we may perhaps not have anyone on ECMO, we will reallocate our specialists back to the ICUs. So we're actually adding resource back to those as well. We use a number of different scheduling strategies. We do have a mixture of 7 on, 7 off. We use 12-hour shifts, full-time, part-time, some PRN staff. You really have to be flexible and you have to be willing to accommodate different schedules just to really maximize the shift coverage. I will say we found that 12-hour shifts tend to work a little bit better for our specialist staff. We do still maintain 7 on, 7 off for our primers, but 12-hour shifts have seemed to be a little bit better more recently. We always say we live in the gray. It's, okay to try different things or different schedules or different approaches, and you may find that doesn't work. So being flexible and living in the gray is okay, and change is okay as well. So by prioritizing ECMO staffing, we're able to utilize that staff for pumps first. Like I mentioned, there was a big barrier there. If the staff lived in the ICU's cost center, we were constantly begging, and there are many staffing issues within the ICUs. So by moving them into our department, we were able to utilize them for pumps first. And then, of course, if there are no pumps, we will reallocate them back to the ICU. So to us, it's a win-win. A couple other things I would encourage you to do is to frequently review job descriptions. Sometimes we can have too strict of the descriptions in there, so it's okay to make it a little more generalized, not to take away from any of the requirements, but maybe you're not getting to the population that you could if you rewrote or reviewed the job description. Also, thinking about minimum requirements, we have had to do that more recently, just because, like I said initially, the workforce is changing, and so we want to accommodate and really broaden our nets as far as trying to find candidates that are suitable to do the job. Also, recruitment strategies. I would be very interested if anyone has any good ideas for recruitment strategies as well as retention, because I think those are two of the things that we have to focus on moving forward. It's also a good idea to utilize multiple disciplines. So we are primarily an RN-based ECMO program. However, we do have some RTs that are trained. And so what we have found is if you can utilize multiple disciplines, you can really maximize your staffing potentials. So the last topic that I'd like to talk about is role development. And I really do think it's important that you train your staff to their highest potential. I think this adds value to your program, but it also gives your employees purpose. It also helps keep them in a good job satisfied place. So it's important that you make sure that you're taking care of the entire employee. So employee wellness initiatives. We do like to debrief very often because it's good, I think, for our employees to talk about, especially the hard cases, but it's also important to talk about all of the good that we do as well. This job can be very draining and very difficult, but it's important that we recognize the good and the more difficult situations we find ourselves in. Also providing support, training, and technology. We do cross-train all of our employees to an ICU. If not all of the ICUs, they can pick a home ICU that they feel most comfortable with. And that takes a little bit of extra work because we have to make sure that their competencies and skills validation are kept up to date. But it does expand their knowledge, and it really does develop their ability to help in other ICUs. I also expect the most productivity out of our team. I want people, to say, oh, I'm so glad that the ECMO team is here, or I'm so glad that they came to help because they really know their stuff. So it's important to make your team valuable around the organization. I also think it's a helpful measure to keep a list or a binder or maybe even like a bulletin board that you can post departmental projects. And that way, when there is some downtime, if there is downtime, employees can go and find where we are in a project and have something to do if they have some non-productive time. So I'm always constantly thinking about how we can make our team more valuable and be a resource to others. So whether that's helping IV therapy or different measures you can take just to make your team most valuable and fully develop their role. And compensation is always important. What we've done in our program is made specific positions for our ECMO specialists and primers. So they are no longer in staff RN roles. They are in ECMO specialist or ECMO primer roles. And this is allowed for further advancement in compensation. And then there's many different ways to decide about differentials and, again, premium pay and whatnot. So compensation will always be a very important topic. So I do feel that logic and creativity are equally important. Of course, you have the logical side of I have this many patients or this many pumps, so I need this many staff members. But if you can use innovative solutions, sometimes you can mitigate the challenges. And that's where the creativity part comes in. So we all can use logic to calculate different FTEs and what is needed for 24/7 staffing. But sometimes it takes thinking outside of the box to really cover those needs and to provide long-term solutions. So I encourage you to speak with your administration and have that data available so that you can advocate for your team. So in closing, we all feel it. We all know that ECMO is stressful. We know that staffing is challenging for a number of different reasons, and the workforce is ever changing. Advocacy is essential for sure. And data can be persuasive and often needed to make any kind of administrative decisions. Creative solutions can be rewarding, and also role development is satisfying. So hopefully this was helpful. I'm happy to take any questions. It looks like there may be some in the Q&A in the chat. Okay, so the first question is Perfusion part of the ECMO team? And yes, they are. We collaborate with Perfusion for our CV ECMO kiddos. They play a very vital role in that. Let's see about the Q&A. Do you have barriers pulling RT into ECMO staff? That's a great question. And it's absolutely a challenge that we face. Like I mentioned, our team is primarily an RN-based program. However, we have several RTs that have joined the team. And I will say there are a few challenges just because with our program being built on a nursing-based model, we used to only have one RN for both the pump and the patient. So there was a lot of clinical nursing care that went into it. However, our RTs are definitely doing a great job and have learned what they need to. We have different competencies that they're required to complete, whether it's computer-based training or different in-class training, just to make sure that they have all of the information and resources that they need. So I think, David, that answers maybe the second part of your question. Then one more question. So the difference between our primers and ECMO specialists. So we staff in-house primers 24/7. Those are what we consider the leaders of the program or of the department. They act similar to a charge nurse role, but they are also responsible for the maintenance of our circuits, building our circuits, priming our circuits, and actually deploying the therapy to the bedside. The ECMO specialist is the one who actually sits the pump. Now, some of the ECMO specialists may be relief primers, but not every specialist is a primer. So the primers go through further training and education to really be the leaders and the ones that really deploy the therapy. So hopefully that is answering that question. Let's see. Thank you. There was one more in the chat, in the Q&A. So do APPs have a role in your department? Absolutely. So I'm actually a nurse practitioner that just happens to be one of the ECMO coordinators as well. I would say I probably play the most active role in the patient management for the NICU patients, the neonates, but each of our ICUs have APPs that help manage the patient, collaborate with the physicians, but I'm the only one actually in the ECMO department. So, but we do consider them to be a very vital participant in the ECMO patient care. So. Okay. Do you have a process in place for continuing education on a provider level? Yes, I would say from my perspective, we do try to offer ECMO specific education for our providers. It is usually more for the fellows or the nurse practitioners. Of course, we do our yearly competencies for our team, but from a provider standpoint, it's something that we try to offer annually. I'll do like an update course for the NPs in the NICU, and then sometimes we'll just send out, kind of flyer type information if some things have changed. So I would say we do have somewhat of a process for continuing education, but we can absolutely work harder on that if anyone has any suggestions. So. Like I said, I'm happy if anyone would like to reach out via email, or I am on LinkedIn, of course, to ask any further questions. I'm happy to answer that. Always happy to share our experience. We are a long-standing program. The coordinator prior to myself was here for 30 years. So we've been around for a minute and probably tried a number of different things. And still face many challenges. So, but again, happy to speak offline to anyone if you have any other questions. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to share what we've learned along the way and what we're facing. And thank you to the organizers of the conference. I'm sure it's been a really great experience. So with that, I think I don't see any more questions in the chat box. So thank you for your time, and I hope everyone has a great day.